So let's anchor ourselves in numbers and in strategy. Because when you strip away the highlight reels, the call-outs, the vain stares, you're left with the cold numbers. And in Du Plessis' case, those numbers aren't just impressive, they tell you exactly why he's a nightmare to fight. We start with the one that jumps right off the page, 6.12 significant strikes landed per minute. Now, on paper, that's the highest in UFC middleweight history for fighters with at least 5 bouts. And that's not a fluke. That's not just him having one crazy fight. That's a consistent fight after fight pattern. Now, why does that matter? Because in MMA, especially at middleweight, most fighters operate in the 3 to 4 strikes per minute range. That's comfortable. That's the I can see what's coming, I can set traps pace. Du Plessis, he doesn't give you that luxury. See, 6.12 isn't just activity, it's suffocation through activity. You're not just dealing with his shots, you're dealing with the mental pressure that comes from never getting to breathe. Imagine sparring someone who never resets, who's always throwing something, a jab, a low kick, a hook to the body, a slap at the guard. Even if half of them miss, your mind is constantly processing the threat. That's fatigue that doesn't show up in your lungs until it's too late. And here's the kicker. His accuracy, around 48%. That's absurd for someone throwing at that pace. For reference, guys who throw high volume usually sit in the low 40s because volume means risk. The fact that Du Plessis is landing nearly half of what he throws tells you his shots aren't random flurries. They are placed, they're intentional, they're thrown in patterns he knows you'll bite on. And now let's talk about the other side of that stat sheet. 4.9 significant strikes absorbed per minute. That's high. Let's not sugarcoat it. Du Plessis will take one to give one. Sometimes he'll take 2 to give 3. And that's where casual fan thinks, oh well, that's a weakness. But in his system, it's calculated trade. He is not afraid of exchanges because he trusts 3 things. 3. Over time, the pace will break you before the shots will break him. This is important. Du Plessis doesn't just win the technical battle, he wins the oxygen war. He's betting that in minute 13, 14, 15 of the fight, you're going to be mentally cooked and physically gassed, and he's going to be there throwing. And this is where his pressure gets layered, because just when you think, all right, I'll time the counters, I'll slow him down, he changes the channel completely. He mixes his explosive forward double leg takedowns, rugby tackles as some describe them. These aren't just slow, telegraphed shots. These are blitz level entries where he's either shooting clean or crashing you into the fence. From there, he transitions quick. Body lock lifts, trips, chain wrestling, all in the same motion. He doesn't need to sit in your guard to score. He'll punch, stand, pass, make you scramble. And here's where it gets sneaky. These takedowns are as much about resetting the tempo as they're about scoring points. If you're finally starting to get your rhythm on the feet, suddenly you're on your back, eating shots, and you've got to build up again. That's mentally draining. The numbers back it up. Nearly 51.6% takedown accuracy. That's elite. Landing around 3 takedowns per 15 minutes at middleweight. That's not normal. Heavyweights and light heavyweights usually don't have to worry about offensive wrestling. That's because it's exhausting to chain takedowns at that size. Du Plessis, he's not just doing it. He's doing it with efficiency. That's high percentage. Means he's not wasting energy on failed shots. He's picking his moments, hitting them, and then making you pay for it with ground and pound or forcing you into scrambles that cost your cardio. Now, was this more evident than in the Whittaker fight? Because Whittaker's a puzzle. Lightning fast jab, elite footwork, and an ability to control range better than almost anyone at middleweight. But Du Plessis walked him down methodically. He didn't sprint in. He didn't get frustrated when Whittaker circled. He just kept touching him. Inside leg kicks, long jabs, high guard pressure, and every time Whittaker looked to exit, Du Plessis had a big looping shot waiting. Then came the grappling sequences, body locks, presses against the fence, and wild combinations when they broke. By the time Whittaker realized he couldn't win the range battle, it was already too late. Du Plessis was dictating that fight. Against Adesanya, it was more of the same, but with added creativity. He pressured methodically, mixing kicks, spinning back fists, clinches, body shots, and wrestling. Adesanya is the kind of fighter who thrives when you give him space. Du Plessis took that space away entirely. And here's the genius. He didn't just blitz for the sake of it. He'd build the pace, then suddenly change levels, or throw a weird angle strike. That unpredictability is what wore Adesanya down. It all culminated in a fourth round rear naked choke against one of the most elusive, hard to finish champions in UFC history. That's not just a win, that's a statement. And we can't ignore one small but huge detail. His coach attributes part of his improved gas tank to his nasal surgery in 2023. This might sound minor, but if you've been training and fighting with a restricted airway your whole career, suddenly being able to breathe freely changes everything. It's like giving a sprinter new lungs. Suddenly those deep exchanges and scramble heavy rounds don't drain you the same way. You can keep that output longer, which for a fighter like Du Plessis, whose entire style is built on sustained pressure, is a weapon upgrade. So why does all this matter in the context of Khamzat? Because Du Plessis is the rare opponent who can match and maybe exceed Khamzat's pace over the long haul. Khamzat's game thrives on breaking opponents with overwhelming pressure and grappling suffocation. Du Plessis fights like that's his comfort zone. When two guys who live in the chaos meet, the question isn't who's more skilled, it's who can live there longer. And Du Plessis has proven fight after fight that he can drag elite opponents into that chaos and come out on top. Khamzat Chimaev is a fighter whose identity is carved into the very bedrock of grappling dominance. When you talk about superior control in MMA, his name sits at the forefront. His fingerprint as an athlete isn't in flashy spinning techniques or unpredictable strikes. It's in the sheer inevitability of what happens once he gets his hands on you. From the opening bell, he's like a GPS-guided missile zeroing in on your hips and legs. He moves through positions not with chaos but with precision, chaining one takedown attempt to another so seamlessly it feels like a continuous motion rather than individual actions. Whether it's a single leg, double leg, or a body lock, Chimaev doesn't just attack. He builds sequences designed to corner opponents into giving him exactly what he wants. That's why many analysts describe his style not simply as wrestling but as positional strangulation. The instant you react to one move, he's already executing the next. And the moment you think you found space, he's crushing it out of you. On paper, Chimaev's takedown efficiency is elite. He lands roughly 4.2 takedowns per 15 minutes of fight time in the UFC, a staggering rate for someone who often finishes fights before they even hit the midway point of round 2. His takedown accuracy hovers around 57%. A number that's impressive given that many elite wrestlers in the UFC, example Usman or Covington, they operate closer to the 45 to 50% range. What's more telling is how little time opponents spend standing once he commits to wrestling. According to Fight Matrix breakdowns, Chimaev holds his adversaries on the mat for an average of 2 minutes and 45 seconds per round when he initiates grappling exchanges. That's suffocating pressure in MMA terms, where a single minute of control time can decide a round. And it's not just about pinning someone down. Chimaev's style incorporates wrist rides, ankle hooks, and heavy top pressure to deny opponents even the smallest chance to explode to their feet. It's very much a Dagestani wrestling influence: control first, punishment second, and submission third. Well, the most impressive part of Chimaev's wrestling is in the raw power. Though he has plenty of that, it's his chain wrestling IQ. For example, if the single leg is defended, he'll immediately transition to a double. If the double is sprawled on, he'll elevate the opponent's hips and switch to a body lock. Now, if the body lock is resisted, he'll drag them down with an inside trip or knee tap. This ability to flow between takedown types without hesitation is what breaks opponents mentally. Fighters can prepare to defend one kind of takedown, but when the attempt morphs into a completely different attack halfway through, defensive plans crumble. But mind you, that doesn't happen by accident. Chimaev's background includes freestyle wrestling in Sweden after relocating from Chechnya, and he adapted that base for MMA with relentless drilling. His entries are low, his level changes sharp, and his penetration step often comes off feints, meaning opponents are reacting late and giving him the initiative. Now, once grounded, Chimaev's approach is suffocating. He doesn't rain down while looping shots that create space for his opponents to scramble. Instead, his strikes are compact, deliberate, and constant enough to force defensive reactions, which in turn open the door for better positions. From half guard, short elbows and body shots keep opponents guessing. From mount, he postures just enough to drop punches, then sinks his weight back down before an escape can be attempted. From back control, he peppers with punches to the head and ribs while maintaining hooks, sometimes flattening opponents out entirely. It's not a reckless barrage, it's controlled violence designed to make you uncomfortable and tired before the submission attempt even arrives. Now, Chimaev's striking is a study in minimalism. He doesn't try to be Adesanya with layered feints and varied angles. No, instead, he uses functional striking to serve a singular purpose: set up his grappling. The jab, sharp, direct, and a reliable rangefinder. The right cross, the power shot that threatens enough to make the opponents cover up, creating entry points for takedowns. And the low kick, used sparingly, often to disguise level changes. However, his striking depth is still developing. Analysts have noted that his overhand right, uppercuts, and head kicks often lack disguise, making them easier to counter. Against high-level strikers, this predictability can be dangerous. Fighters like Borz and Usman were able to tag him when his entries came without proper setup. Now, the Mighty Mouse had glowing words for Chimaev's grappling. After Chimaev dismantled Whitaker, Johnson described the technique as technically sound, perfect, correct. He highlighted the neck crank breakdown against the cage, a subtle but highly effective move that prevents opponents from establishing posture to defend the takedown. This is important praise because Johnson's game is built on efficiency. For him to call someone technically perfect is an endorsement that Chimaev's skill isn't just physical, it's cerebral. Now, for all his strengths, Chimaev's conditioning has raised questions. In fights against Borz and Usman, his dominance in the first round visibly waned in later frames. His explosive, all-in style naturally burns energy had a high rate. Against Borz, after an intense first round, his output dipped and his defense openings widened. Against Usman, his wrestling was effective early, but the pace slowed in the third round. Recognizing this as a career bottleneck, Chimaev brought in Sam Calavita, a renowned strength and conditioning coach who has worked with Olympic athletes and MMA champions, to overhaul his approach. Reports indicate his training now includes extended grappling sprints, VO2 max testing, and anaerobic threshold drills designed to push him past the round 1 burst limit. The aim? To sustain his signature pressure for full 5 rounds, and adaptation crucial for championship-level fights. Now, if Du Plessis is a multi-level grinder who wins by drowning opponents in volume and chaos, Chimaev is a single-focus executioner who specializes in control and dominance. Du Plessis is comfortable trading to create openings. Chimaev would rather eliminate the trade entirely by taking you down and keeping you there. The stylish clash between them becomes fascinating because it's not simply striker versus grappler. Du Plessis is also dangerous in the clinch and on the ground, and Chimaev is capable of landing hard shots on the feet, but their primary instincts diverge sharply. Du Plessis wants sustained exchanges across phases. Chimaev wants to skip phases and lock the fight into one, his grappling domain. Beyond the physical, Chimaev's fight IQ is often underrated. His ability to anticipate defensive reactions is at the core of his success. For example, when opponents circle away from his power side, he uses the jab to walk them into the double leg. When they drop their hands to defend the level change, he throws a straight right. When they frame against his head on the cage, he switches to knee taps or trips. This predictive quality means he's often one step ahead, forcing opponents into a reactive mode they can't escape from. Now, every fighter has stats, but with Chimaev, the numbers are not the whole story. His 4.2 takedowns per fight aren't just a stat, it's a statement. You don't get to fight your fight, you fight mine. His 92% finish rate is not not about recklessness, it's about sufficiency. He doesn't chase unnecessary exchanges. Once he's in control, he stays there until the job is done. In a sport where many fighters talk about breaking their opponents, Chimaev's style is built to actually do it, not in 25 minutes, but often before the clock hits 10. When you place him across from Du Plessis, you're looking at a contest of wills, not just skills. Can Du Plessis create enough chaos to keep the fight multi-dimensional? Can Chimaev impose a single dimension so brutally that Du Plessis never gets out of first gear? That's the heart of this matchup, and that's why it's not just another fight but a stylistic experiment between two of the most imposing middleweights in the world. Thank you.